Gregory Mofokeng, who's the General Secretary of the Black Business Council in the built environment, joins us in studio to talk about that. The last point is exactly what KETSO Gordon was asking for. Let me shape my own team. Now Becky says, well, the next CEO will be able to shape their own team. It seems as though sometimes we in South Africa have to hit a crisis before we change.
Well, I think the issue was the approach, the manner in which he wanted to do it. And I think that's where the disagreement arose between him and the board. And this is what has led us to where we are today. So I think the difference really was in the approach.
But it's not a line in the sand. This has been going on for 2 years. For 2 years, KETSO sat in that chair and he told us, for 2 years, someone else who threw their hat in the ring to become the CEO had been white-anting him, had been cutting him down at every opportunity. He's been saying so all along. It isn't something that all of a sudden there's an approach that he wants to fire her. It has been a built-up. So I guess, but we're all human beings, aren't we?
Well, we're all human beings, but there are rules that we have to play by. And I think the board has been clear to say that the manner in which KETSO wanted to go about firing the person that he wanted to fire was not following due process. Therefore, one can have a wish in terms of the strategy, but there are rules to play by. And I think this is where really it came down to, that the board wanted a particular process to be followed, and KETSO was not playing ball.
The process that's been followed and the result that we hear of this morning, does it show that the power truly does lie in the hands of the shareholders?
Well, the power will always lie in the hands of the shareholders. I think for us, we are glad that sanity has finally prevailed. But however, we also wanted this to go all the way, in fact. I mean, we are obviously glad that the board managed to convince the shareholders that this special shareholders meeting should not go ahead as originally planned. However, we actually wanted this to go ahead so that those that, in our view, are people who are, there to ensure that, because our view is that the issue here is that the board was under attack precisely because of its, demographic makeup. This has never happened before, and we think that, the cause that was taken by KETSO and some of the shareholders really, said to us that because of the demographic makeup of the board, they can do this, something that has never happened before.
I've never heard that part.
Well, we have issued statements to that effect.
You have, but
yes,
the board hasn't.
Well, the board does not have to. We have our
shareholders
own view.
haven't. Are you saying Dave Ford is a racist? Are you saying that Vizio and Nedbank took this on from a racial perspective?
We are saying, show us an instance where this has happened, where a CEO has a fallout with the board and runs to the shareholders, and the shareholders then support the CEO to then topple the board. Where has this happened? So our view is very simple, that when you look at the racial makeup of the board...
It's a black CEO.
Well, I can assure you that there are more black people out there who will side with KETSO, in fact, who are more anti-transformation that you'll ever think. We encounter them every day, where you find that even where there are transformation strategies that must be employed, the very black people will be the first to not support those. So at the end of the day, just because you are black, it does not mean that you support transformation. It doesn't.
So what you say, I want to get what you're saying now, because it's a little confusing to me. You're saying that the shareholders decided to support KETSO Gordon because he's anti-transformation.
Precisely. Let me just reinforce my point. When you look at the proposed board, in fact, the net effect of KETSO strategy will have made sure that overnight you have a majority-wide board at PPC. So at the end of the day, we look at the demographic makeup of the proposed board and we say, hang on, what is happening here? And I think our analysis was very clear that overnight you will have a majority-white board replacing a majority black board. And I think when you look at where we are as a country, the transformation gains that we have registered as a country, we cannot afford to have that.
That's
How do you
extraordinary.
strike a balance between transformation as well as having people who are able to do the job sitting at the board?
Well, that's a very interesting point, because when you look at the narrative around the story, in fact, it evolved from delegation of authority between the board and the CEO. Then later on, we were told that, in fact, the CEO thinks that the board is incompetent. And we were then later told about a board that is imbalanced. When you look at the proposed board, tell me there if there is anybody who has any cement experience that was supposed to be replacing the current board. In fact, when you look at the current board, they have far more experience in running a cement company than the proposed board. Therefore, we think that these were just trivial reasons that were given. This was just an attack on the board.
So
That's
are
our
you-
position.
Are you saying that the board that was proposed by KETSO Gordon, in other words, not the board that is now being proposed, are you saying Bobby Godsell is a racist? I
Well-
mean, seriously.
Well, I'm not saying Bobby Godsell is a racist.
Come on,
What
you
I'm
know-
telling, no. Give me a chance. Let me respond. What I'm saying is that Bobby Godsell should have thought twice before agreeing to serve on a board that was going to transform the racial makeup of the PPC board. This is what we are saying. And in fact, the very interesting issue with Bobby Godsell is that Bobby Godsell was, in fact, one of the leaders in this, business leaders in this country, who was doing a lot for transformation and BE. And in fact, our view was that should he have applied his mind properly, he should have at least advised those that were putting the board together that, look, let's not undermine the racial composition of the new board.
So that's the key to you. Racial compositions
That's-
of boards, not necessarily what the shareholders were wanting, the perhaps more efficient running of the business.
Well,
I'm saying that shareholders are not interested in race. Shareholders are interested in returns. But you're saying these shareholders were only interested in race.
no, that's not what we're saying.
Well, what are you saying?
When we look at the current board, I mean, give us an instance where, in fact, in the past, any one of the CEOs or any one of the shareholders has gone out and said our board is incompetent. In fact, the board members that are there were appointed by the shareholders. The shareholders were comfortable with their CVs. They know their level of education. They know their experience, and that's why they are appointed to this board. Our view is that it's not about the competency. It's not about the competence. These people know what they're doing. I mean, if that was not the case, since 2005, when transformation started happening at the PPC board, then I'm sure that all the black directors that have served on that board, some of them will have been taken out of the board if they were incompetent. But you look at some of the people that are there, they've been serving since 2005. That says something. If the shareholders were not happy, they should have replaced them a long time ago. Our view, therefore, is that this is not about competency. It is not. And like I said, if you are looking for a balanced board, the current board, in our view, is far more balanced than the board that was proposed by KETSO. Look at their CVs, look at their experience, and tell me if anybody on that list has more experience of running a cement company than the current board.
So who on the current list has experience of running a cement company?
Well,
the new chair, SIBIYA Kanyago, has been involved in property, not cement. The new chair who's going to take over from Becky SIBIYA.
Well, I've just said to you that the oldest board, the board member that has served longest on that board has been there since 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Show me somebody in the proposed board who's been there, who has run a cement company. So, and others were appointed a long time ago.
KETSO Gordon is one.
Well, KETSO Gordon, remember, was appointed 18 months ago, and he found the rest of the board members there already. In fact, it was only 2 that were appointed after his appointment.
Why do you have to make this a racial thing?
Well, because we are picking up racial undertones on this.
But come on, I mean, we're 20 years into a democracy. We're trying to build this country
Then how
together.
do you
Why
explain-
must it be a racial thing?
Then how do you explain a board that is black, which we view as competent, being transformed overnight to a majority white board? Can you explain that to us?
I would suggest that the shareholders looked at this board and believed that it had not performed in the manner of making returns to shareholders. And I just wanted to have a look at the share price performance over the past 3 years, which I'm sure you could tell me better. It's down 19% in the last year,
Right.
at a time when the JSE is up in double figures. Now that, at least, you have to acknowledge is not a sparkling performance.
It is not a sparkling performance, but we also have to look at the environment within which PPC is operating. At their results presentation a couple of weeks ago, they made this very clear. And I'm sure you are aware that, especially in South Africa, the market in which they're operating is quite tough. You can see that even from the results of the construction companies that have been reporting recently, that their results are also not sparkling. And this is obviously something that the shareholders have to take into consideration.
Your expectations for CEO?
Well, we are hoping that a competent CEO will be appointed, and we are hoping that whoever gets appointed will continue the good work of ensuring that PPC remains one of the most transformed companies in our sector as far as the JSE listed companies are concerned.
The share price today is lower than it was 3 years ago. Thank you, Gregory. And what a fascinating discussion.
Thank
But let's get the race thing out of it.
No, we are
please.
not. We're not going to get it out. There's no way that we can replace a majority black board with a majority white board in 2014 in South Africa. We are not going to take that. Never. Especially when the people are not incompetent. If you were telling me that the board is useless, they don't know what they're doing, then it's something. Then let's have a discussion about competency and say, who are we replacing these people with? Who is competent? I'm saying, when you look at all the annual reports, when you look at all the engagements within the management of PPC and the investors throughout the years, from Paul to KETSO, there was no issue about the board not being supportive. There was no issue about the board not understanding the direction that the company is taking. Now, all of a sudden, just because you have KETSO, who's got an issue, now you want to paint the whole board as useless, as not knowing what they're doing. This is not an issue of competency. If you want us to have a discussion about competency, let's do that. And tell us that those people don't have the necessary qualification, don't have the necessary experience.
I get what you're saying, and I get where you're coming from, but I can tell you, as a person who's followed investment markets for 35 years, investors don't give a toss about race.
And that's what we need to change.
That was Gregory Mofokeng, the General Secretary of the Black Business Council in the built environment.